Welcome back to the story of me and you. Today, we begin a journey, not just across miles, but across centuries. This is a story of mystery, of discovery, and above all, of connection between past and present, between myth and truth, between one man's footprint and the weight of time itself. What if something forgotten for over 1,600 years suddenly spoke again? What if its message wasn't just about the past, but about us? Let's walk into the fields of Boxford, England, and listen closely. The field where time stood still. It was the kind of English countryside that inspires poetry. Rolling hills blanketed in dew, the soft shuffle of leaves in late September, and the whisper of history under every step. Boxford, a sleepy village in West Berkshire, held no grand castles, no famous ruins, just the quiet and a memory buried deep beneath a farmer's field. The year was 2017. A group of amateur archaeologists, retirees, students, and weekend history buffs were surveying the area with little more than modest tools and boundless curiosity. Among them was Martin Perkins, a retired school teacher whose eyes still sparkled like a child's at the thought of uncovering the unknown. I didn't expect to find anything more than pottery shards, Martin chuckled later, but what we found, I don't think any of us were ready. What Martin and his team unearthed was a mosaic, a Roman-era mosaic. The fragments were dusty, the colors faded, but the artistry was undeniable. Even in broken pieces, it sang of myth and grandeur. One tile depicted a chariot, another showed figures mid-race. A name echoed in whispers through the soil. Pelops. For a moment, the group stood in silence, not just from awe, but reverence. They weren't just looking at history, they were holding it. It took 2 more years before professionals stepped in, and in 2019, the full extent of the mosaic was revealed. Over 20 feet by 20 feet, the size of a small room, intricately laid with scenes from Greek mythology. Experts called it one of the greatest Roman mosaics ever found in the UK. The village of Boxford had unknowingly sat atop a priceless piece of world heritage for over 1,600 years. But buried along with it was a deeper mystery. There was this one stone, Martin later told BBC Radio. It didn't belong. It wasn't Roman. It wasn't ancient British. And carved on it were 5 Chinese characters. Jim was here. This was where the story began to shift, where archaeology met anomaly, and where a centuries-old artifact suddenly asked questions no one could yet answer. Who was Jim? Why was his name in Simplified Chinese, a system not invented until the 1950s? Had someone played a trick? Or was there something stranger at play? What followed would shake the quiet hills of Boxford and ripple across the world. The 5 characters that shouldn't exist. Martin Perkins sat in the modest Boxford Village Hall, eyes fixed on the stone tablet under dim light. Around him were a handful of experts invited from Oxford and London, linguists, historians, and skeptics alike. The room was silent, save for the low hum of overhead lights and the rustle of paper as someone zoomed in on the photo again. On that weathered limestone slab were 5 unmistakable characters. Jimu Zai J Li. Jim was here. Simple. Clear. Modern. Too modern. This is not just an anomaly, whispered Dr. Elaine Shen, a sinologist from King's College London. This is impossible. The script, they confirmed, was Simplified Chinese, introduced in 1956 by the People's Republic of China to promote literacy. The style, spacing, and stroke order matched textbook modern Chinese. In other words, it had no reason to be there among Roman relics from the 4th century. It was like finding a smartphone in an Egyptian tomb. The press caught wind of the story quickly, within days. The Guardian, The Times, and even international networks ran headlines like, "Ancient Roman Mosaic may contain modern Chinese graffiti." Did time travel leave a signature in Boxford? Boxford, a village once known for sheep farming, became a center of media frenzy. Tourists poured in, curious eyes peering over the edge of a taped-off excavation site. Some came for answers, others came for wonder. My son asked me, Martin recounted in a BBC interview, "Dad, if this was real, does that mean the future is already part of the past?" And honestly, I didn't know what to say. To most archaeologists, the explanation was obvious. A modern hoax, perhaps a prank pulled during an earlier dig, a bored teenager, a misstep by an unsupervised volunteer. That theory offered relief. It restored the rules of time and history. But what gnawed at them was this. The carving was deep, weathered, ancient. Whoever made it hadn't done it with a pocket knife last summer. It had been there, for you, but a long time. Too long. Underscore, 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 underscore. Over the following weeks, a small team of multilingual epigraphists joined the dig, using microscopes and 3D scanners. They confirmed that the inscription was carved before the surrounding limestone had weathered, meaning it had been there long before the recent excavation. The artifact defied logic, history, and all known linguistic timelines. We study languages to understand the past, Dr. Elaine whispered again. But what if, this once, a language from the future found its way into the past? The search for Jim. The inscription was clear, the stone was real, and the world wanted to know, who was Jim? What began as a local excavation had now escalated into a full-blown mystery, gripping historians, conspiracy theorists, and curious minds alike. But while the experts debated timelines and weathering patterns, others turned their attention to a far simpler, more human question. Was Jim someone we could actually find? The hunt began online. Across Reddit forums, Weibo threads, and obscure YouTube rabbit holes, amateur sleuths and digital detectives tried to trace every possible Jim who had any connection to 1. Chinese heritage, 2. Simplified script, 3. Archaeological activity in England. Within days, a few names surfaced. A retired Chinese-British archaeologist named Jim Liu, who once lectured in Oxford. A young exchange student nicknamed Little Jim, who volunteered at a summer dig in Berkshire in 2009. A graffiti artist from Manchester with the alias Zimu. A phonetic match to Jim in Chinese. None of them fit, not truly. We weren't looking for a person anymore, Martin reflected quietly one evening. We were looking for a ghost. Or a myth that borrowed someone's name. Underscore, 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 underscore. The trail grew colder, but then a quiet breakthrough. Former local historian Annabelle Grant, who had cataloged oral histories from West Berkshire for over 30 years, remembered something odd. In a 1983 interview with an elderly farmhand named George Elms, she had recorded this. There was a funny thing we found back in the 50s, see? Near the Turner Field. Looked like some foreign letters. Chinese, maybe. We buried it back. Thought it was a prank. The Turner Field was the exact plot where the mosaic now lay uncovered. That means someone saw the carving decades before we even knew the mosaic existed, Elaine Chen noted with a tremble in her voice. This wasn't a modern hoax. But the question remained, if Jim wasn't a person from today, could he have been someone from another time? Or perhaps something history forgot? A local legend began circulating, one few had taken seriously until now, about a man with foreign eyes seen walking the hills of Boxford in the late 19th century. Always alone, always silent. He came and went without warning. Some said he looked Asian, others said he glowed at night, the man from the hills. It began as whispers, old stories passed down at dusty kitchen tables and smoky pub corners, tales no one had written down because no one thought they mattered. But now, in the shadow of a Roman mosaic and an impossible inscription, those forgotten voices began to speak again. Underscore, 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 Boxford, 1891. In a tattered journal found in the attic of the town's old parsonage, Martin and Dr. Elaine stumbled upon an entry written in neat cursive by Reverend Thomas Glave, a local clergyman. Saw the silent man again. Always at twilight, walking the ridge just north of the Turner Field. Never speaks. Wears no hat. Eyes like burning coal, dark but not unkind. The children call him Jim. The name. There it was again. Jim, etched not just in stone now, but in memory. Not a historian, not a farmer, not a prankster, a figure from the mist, a visitor of uncertain time. Over the next weeks, Martin and Elaine uncovered 4 more independent references to the Silent Man. In a schoolteacher's diary, a midwife's notebook, a grieving widow's letter. All described a man of Eastern features, often seen alone, never aged. Some claimed he appeared during thunderstorms. One woman wrote that he left no footprints. Underscore, 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 underscore. I thought it was just a ghost story, said Harold Elms, grandson of the old farmhand George. But Granddad said once, the man knew things before they happened, that he predicted the Great War years before it came, called it by name. Underscore, 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 underscore. Elaine began collecting all this into a single folder. Dates, names, statements. She didn't dare publish it, not yet. The academic world would mock her. But in the quiet of her study, the pages began to form a pattern. The sightings of Jim occurred at moments of transition, between empires, before wars, after plagues, as if he was drawn not to places, but to turning points. He came when the world trembled, Elaine wrote in her notes. Perhaps not to stop it, perhaps only to witness, to remember, or to leave something behind for us. Underscore, 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 underscore. And then came the most haunting discovery yet. The image of the chariot mosaic, believed to depict Pelops, was sent to a team of image historians in Rome. After digital reconstruction, they revealed something strange in the lower corner, a shadowed figure standing outside the racetrack, not in Roman style, wearing what looked eerily like a modern tunic, and thin, wire-rimmed glasses. Whoever Jim was, he had not just visited the site, he had entered the story, the mosaic within. By now, the mosaic had become more than an archaeological treasure. It was a message, a mirror, a memory that didn't quite belong to any single time. At first glance, it was a classic Roman composition, Pelops in his chariot, Hippodamia watching from the stands, Oenomaus falling behind, horses frozen in perfect motion. But when the team studied it again, they noticed it didn't follow convention. For one, the vanishing point, the perspective, was subtly wrong. Too modern. Renaissance painters used this kind of depth, but in Roman art, it simply didn't exist. Then came the colors, shades of indigo and cerulean, uncommon in Roman Britain. These pigments weren't found in any nearby dig sites. More disturbingly, in the lower edge of the mosaic, there were three small figures, barely visible unless lit from a certain angle. They were not Greek, not Roman. One was holding what looked like a metallic rectangle. We tried to dismiss it as coincidence, said Dr. Elaine, visibly shaken. But this wasn't noise in the stone. It was deliberate, intentionally hidden. An AI-enhanced scan revealed more. The rectangular object had tiny grooves, like circuits. One of the smaller figures, possibly a child, seemed to be pointing at the viewer. Not at Pelops, not at the scene, but at us. And behind them, a shape once dismissed as a rock took form, an arch, a portal, a threshold. It was as if they were not in the story, said Martin, voice hushed, but watching it. From outside time, like us. Underscore, 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 underscore. Suddenly, the mosaic wasn't just depicting myth. It was commenting on myth, and perhaps it was warning us. Pelops' tale, after all, is not one of triumph. It's one of deceit, sabotage, and consequences that ripple through generations. A cycle repeated, a loop. And in the margins of that ancient loop, someone left a mark, a name, 5 characters. Jim was here. Art is memory encoded in image, Elaine said. What if someone used it to store more than beauty? What if they stored a truth? Time unwound. For weeks, the team sat with questions they could not answer and questions they could no longer ignore. What if the Boxford mosaic wasn't just a Roman artifact, but a temporal echo? A recording from the edge of history, where timelines bled together. What if Jim wasn't the creator of the message, but a remnant? Martin stood in front of a chalkboard in the village hall, once a schoolhouse, now a war memorial. He drew a timeline, ancient Rome on the left, present day on the right. Then he added a second arc, bending down and looping back, a convergence point. Maybe time doesn't just move forward, he said softly. Maybe it circles. And someone or something lives in the margins. Elaine began digging into temporal philosophy, quantum entanglement, and theories of nonlinear time. She found something haunting. In 1971, theoretical physicist John Wheeler wrote of the participatory universe, where observers influence reality just by witnessing it. We are not only observers, Wheeler wrote, we are participants in the unfolding of the universe. Could Jim have been such a participant? Someone who didn't just travel through time, but recorded it like a silent archivist at the edge of a cosmic loop? If the Boxford Mosaic was a message, then its medium was not marble. It was time itself. Imagine if every turning point in human history had a witness, Elaine whispered. Not to interfere, not to change anything, just to remember for when we forget ourselves. Some dismissed this theory as romanticism. Others felt something shift, because deep down, we all know there are moments, fragile, immense, irreversible, when something more than chance is watching. Moments when we're not alone. And maybe Jim, whoever or whatever he is not ahead of us, not behind, but beside us. Always. When the future remembers. Boxford was quiet again. The last archaeologist had packed their tools. The press had moved on. The field, once crowded with reporters and tourists, had returned to stillness. And yet, something had changed. In the village church, a group of school children gathered around a replica of a mosaic. Their teacher, Mrs. Langley, pointed to the racing horses, the figures, the shadowy silhouette in the corner. This, she said, isn't just about the past. It's about how we remember the past. And how maybe the past remembers us too. The little girl raised her hand. Is Jim still here? And no one laughed. On the edge of the mosaic site, a new wooden bench had been placed. A small plaque read, "In memory of those who walked before us and those who watched from beyond time." And below, carved quietly, Jim was here. Martin returned to the site alone one misty morning. He sat in silence, his breath white in the cold air, not waiting for answers anymore, but holding the question gently, like something sacred. Maybe Jim is just a symbol, he whispered to the fog, of what we choose to witness, the parts of ourselves we refuse to forget. He closed his eyes, and for a moment he swore he heard hoofbeats in the soil, and someone breathing beside him. Underscore, 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 underscore. The story had never really been about proving time travel or decoding a mysterious inscription. It had always been about something more profound, the idea that someone, somewhere, remembers us. That in the vast expanse of time, no moment is ever truly lost, as long as someone chooses to witness it. The witness? No answers came. No time machine appeared. Jim never walked out of the mist to tell his story. And still, something lingered. A year had passed since the last excavation. Boxford had returned to its rhythm. Quiet mornings, slow Sunday walks, the familiar clang of church bells. But every now and then, someone would pause at the bench near the field. Sit, think, feel. And in those moments, Jim was real. Not because of what he was, but because of what he represented. Maybe that's all a witness is, Martin wrote in his final field journal. Not someone with the power to change the world, but someone who chooses not to look away. Elaine never published a paper. Instead, she began teaching again, not about the past as a fixed timeline, but about the choices we make to carry stories forward. She hung a replica of the mosaic in her lecture hall, but not the full piece, just the corner, the shadow, the place where someone had once stood, watching. Underscore, 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 underscore. Maybe we all leave something behind. Not always in stone or words, but in how we notice the world, in how we stay when it would be easier to walk away, in how we choose to remember. So maybe Jim was never meant to be found. Maybe he was meant to remind us that being present